Marion. I hope you're doing great. Okay, I'm going to go right into screen share. We have a lot to talk about. So I'm sending you your report, which came in, I think, it's like 60 pages. But what we're going to do, first, I want to show you the wheel that I send. I never know where people are at with their knowledge of astrology. So I always like to send a beginner's wheel, which is what this is. So basically, you have a key here, which will indicate it's an easy access to see what you have in what sign and in what house, right? Like, so you have your moon in Aquarius in the fourth, you have your sun in Capricorn in the third, and so forth. These are all the glyphs and what each one is. And then, of course, you have the aspects here, what they look like. And this is just good to know. This is a quick reference for the aspects that were going on when you were born. And this is your wheel. Now, don't get thrown off by all of this nonsense in the middle. Really, what's more important to look at is what sign is on each house, and then the larger planets that are involved in each house. This is the stuff that you're really going to really utilize on a, almost a daily basis, right? When you really understand it, how each energy is speaking to what in your chart. So it's just really good to understand not only the sign, but the house and the degree. Each house has 30 degrees. So the first 10 degrees are called the first decan. The second 11 to 19 degrees is the second decan, and then the third decan would be those last 10 degrees. So it's just important to I don't want you to get too confused about that, but for each sign, it could end up, so for example, you're a Capricorn sun and your sun sign is in your fourth house, and you have your sun sign at 25 degrees. So, which is a very evolved degree, by the way, those last 10 degrees are very evolved. So you may have, even if you knew a Capricorn in your life who also had their sun in the fourth house, but maybe they were at 4 or 5 degrees, your experience may be very different than theirs, right? So every 10 degrees, the experience even within that house can change. This is how specific it can get. And again, it's not enough to just know that your sun is in Capricorn. That's only part of the story. The other part of the story is that you have your sun in Capricorn in the fourth house, which is how you're going to experience. So you're going to notice when we get to your report in a moment that I don't only give you the sign that where it is, but the house that it's in, because it's going to inform your experience and where that focus is in your life. So understanding that fundamental point is very important in understanding why not all Capricorns have the same experience, right? No, you see, because you're a Scorpio rising, that Scorpio rising, all rising signs drive the entire birth chart. And so it's very important to understand your rising sign as well. So that rising sign is really the way that you're meeting the world, the way the world meets you. It's the way you start things, it's your physical appearance, it's your day-to-day sense of self. Your sun sign is more your ego consciousness. It's sort of that rod that runs right through your being. It's the core of who you are, but it doesn't necessarily inform your daily experience, right? As there are many things that inform our daily experience, which is why it's so great that you're going to learn about your chart. You Capricorn, but you're very, very heavy Scorpio energy here, right? And then also we need to understand what was going on in those houses when you were born. So before we get to the report, I want to just explain the wheel to you, and we're going to go through the houses and what each means. But obviously, I think you know at this point there are 12 houses. But what you don't see on these wheels is who's the landlord of each house and who rules it. And this is very important to understand so that you can understand the fundamental energy that is in each house, even if no planets are in it. Okay. So for example, let's look at your 7th house and your 8th house. You look at those and you're like, wow, they're totally empty. I have nothing going on in my 7th and 8th house. And these are relationship houses, but I know I've had stuff going on in my relationship houses. Well, Taurus is always in the seventh. You have Taurus on your seventh house, rather. So Taurus, which is ruled by Venus, was aspecting the seventh house, okay, when you were born. So you have Taurus on your seventh. But the landlord of the seventh is Libra, also ruled by Venus. You have a lot of Venusian energy in that seventh house. So even though it looks empty, you have Taurus, Libra, and Venus in there. So the reason I'm saying that is probably one of the biggest points of confusion that I experience as an astrologer, that people get confused. Like, my house is empty. I have nothing going on there. Yes, you do. You always do. We just don't have any outer planets hanging out in there, and doesn't mean that there aren't things aspecting it. Like, for example, you have Chiron aspecting right in a sextile to that Chironic energy, as well as that Saturn, Taurus energy. You have Saturn sextiling, you have Venus sextiling. So we're going to talk about what all these things mean. But it's important to understand that each house is a landlord and each house is a ruler. Now, I put all of this in the report. And I do that because I like you to have a reference back. There's no way in 45 minutes you could possibly get all the information that I would like you to actually have a complete understanding of your chart. A complete understanding of the analysis of your chart. Okay, so let's go into your report. So the way we're going to work your report, I mean, it's quite long, and I'm not going to 63 pages. So we're not going to read everything, you and I together. That would be just silly, but we are definitely going to go through the houses. We're going to go through some of the outer planets, speak about them. I'm going to add some information. We'll talk about your nodes, Chiron, and Black Moon Lilith. When I talk about the nodes, Chiron and Black Moon Lilith, I'm sure you've heard the word shadow work, the phrase shadow work rather. And from this perspective, it's more like evolutionary astrology. And evolutionary astrology's whole point is to help us understand our challenges, and it's where we experience a significant amount of discomfort, so that we can look at it and kind of get in front of it, and not have it be such an issue anymore. Or at the very least, validate why we do or experience some of the things we experience, and then work from there and try to understand ourselves better. So let's talk about the houses. So the first house we call the house of self, right? And as I indicated before, every house has a landlord and a rule. So the landlord of the first house is Aries, and it's ruled by Mars. And I want you to think about the birth chart as like a big baseball mitt, that when you were born, it's like they were all like Aries and Mars were in the first house waiting for you, right? Taurus and Venus were in the second house waiting for you. Gemini and Mercury in the third house waiting for you. So all of these landlords and rulers were waiting for you. And then when you were born, boom, you hit that mitt. And then everybody kind of stayed and nobody went home, right? So that's kind of the energy there. So when we're talking about Aries as a landlord, it's the baby of the zodiac. It's very like, I want what I want when I want it. This is me. I matter. Think about it again, like a child. We're all like that in the first house, where very viscerally we know how we want things and what we want and how we want it. So it is the doorway into the chart and ultimately into our lives. A planet here tells you how you cope with each new experience, since the ascendant represents the horizon at the moment of birth, right? So that's from a locale, that's the situation with that. So the first house indicates the earliest moments of your life, but it also symbolizes how you will experience everything new now that you're here and you've been here for a while. So new relationships, new jobs, but also every day is a new experience. It's a new day, right? So that's why your rising sign is so important to understand as far as how you deal with your day to day. So it's all first impressions, the self, appearance, leadership, new initiatives, fresh starts and beginnings. So, and the house is an Aries house, but you have Scorpio on the first house. So we take that energy and everything that it means, right? The first house has a very strong influence also in your life but a lot of stuff like dragged in from past life energy. And even if you don't believe in that, what can show up a lot of times in the first house is what was going on with our mother while she was pregnant. Because the 12th house, which is the house right before it, right? Because it's a circle, right? So it goes 1 through 12, but then right into 1. It doesn't just like stop there, right? That's if we're born in the first house, then we're in utero in the 12th house, right? And so the 12th house is a water energy. It's Pisces, ruled by Neptune. It's the underworld. That's what we're in when we're in our mother, right? We're in water when we're in utero. And Pisces, 12th house energy, is water. Pisces energy is the closest to the other side. It's sort of between things. And that's what we are when we're in utero. We exist, but we're not of the world yet, right? So that's that 12th house. So a lot of times what's going on in the energy when we're in utero, in that 12th house energy with our mothers, a lot of times it will show up in our first house as well, right? Because that's when we're born. So energetically, we pick up on what we're sort of exposed to energetically when through our mothers, right? When we're in utero, and that is going to impact when we're born. And it does have a fundamental sort of ripple effect, right, on how we process a lot of things in our life. So Scorpio on the first tells me life is viewed as a battle in which triumph and defeat often feature for you. Now, you should know that Scorpio is, first of all, I want to say that there are no bad placements or bad signs, good placements, good signs. Everything just is. If we're having an experience that's challenging us within a particular sign or a placement of an outer planet or anything like that, it just means that we need to pay particular attention to that. And that's where we're going to need to work. Like discomfort equals the need to work and look at something, right? So Scorpio, wherever it is in anyone's chart, is a challenge because Scorpio, as well as the modern ruler Pluto, not the traditional ruler is Mars, but the modern ruler Pluto, we're talking about these energies that aren't meant to stay the same. It's constant upheaval, it's constant transformation. It could be on a micro level or it could be on a macro level, but it's this constant need to change. At the same time, and this is where it gets tricky, Scorpio rising is a very loyal energy, which is, and it upsets me as an astrologer that a lot of, whenever we talk about Scorpio, just the energy of Scorpio, wherever it is, whether it's your sun sign, rising sun, moon sign, no sign, maybe you just have it in a house. Because Scorpio rules sex, a lot of times it's like, oh no, Scorpio energy, because they rule sex, they're all unfaithful, right? It's like what they say, all Geminis are liars, all Cancers are crybabies, all, these sweeping commentaries, right? It's just so silly. Scorpionic energy is extremely faithful. It really is, but it's very scared at the same time because it's that deep water. And so it's very protective. And what do scorpions, right? The glyph is a scorpion. What do scorpions do when they're feeling very vulnerable or like they're going to be hurt? They sting themselves. It's almost like, I'm going to get me before you can get me, kind of thing. And then they sting themselves. And when they sting themselves, they kill themselves instead of going to that degree of being hurt, right? So obviously we're not talking about Scorpios killing themselves, but they could end up manifesting as self-sabotaging behaviors, right? This is certainly what can happen wherever our scorpionic energy is. It's where anxiety hangs out. It's there's a lot of karma, but it's this need to always grow, change, and transform, right? So you have this on that first house cusp, and there could be like a very battly energy there, okay? Because Scorpio also, as I mentioned a few moments ago, the traditional ruler is Mars. And Mars is the warrior. So you have this warrior energy with the need for change. Isn't that what a battle is, right? So intensity is the key in your mode of self-expression. You need to balance this with some stability and practicality. Very sensitive, very emotional, right? You might you might try to resist this fact though, because this is what's interesting. Wherever scorpionic energy is, all of us, no one wants to hear about it. it's it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable and nobody wants to hear about it because it could be like a dark energy, right? It could end up showing up as that. Um, in the same way as, physically you may have dark hair, like a strong nose, very fierce attitude, very sparkly eyes. And the thing is, even if you're blonde, there's a sharpness about your physicality, that's definitely like very Scorpio ascending. Now, I just want to mention while we're on the topic of Scorpio, because there's just so much stuff going on with Scorpio right now. I mean, in my view, Scorpio sort of, it's all about Scorpio now for the next 2 years, to be honest with you, because we have we just had the partial lunar eclipse, right, in Taurus, and we have the full solar eclipse happening in Sagittarius, right? But this is kicking off, and this is working with the Scorpio and Taurus axis. So Sagittarius and Gemini are currently the nodes of the moon, which has to do with karma, fate, and destiny. It's very real. I'm going to talk about your natal nodes. You had your nodal return. You just finished it last year. But meanwhile, you're probably saying like, no kidding. I went through it. But it doesn't have to be a scary thing. It doesn't have to be a big thing. It's just so important to understand when it's happening so that you could process why what's happening, when it's happening, and sort of almost plan, if that makes sense, and stay open to it. So why is this going to be very important for you? Well, because the south node of the moon, which is the area in our chart, in our life, where we need to make changes, we need to release, we need to sacrifice, and we need to ask advice. I like to look at it like this: ask advice, because you're not going to you can't get rid of the south node, and you can't become the north node. It doesn't work like that. It's more like you get advice from the north node to soften the elements of the south node. What does that mean for you? Sagittarius south node is going to be passing the torch right now. Sagittarius is the south node. It's going to be passing the torch to Scorpio in the middle of January. So the axis lasts, like we're going to be finishing up the Sagittarius and Gemini axis. It's been going on for 18 months. Before that, it was Capricorn and Cancer. So you were having your nodal return then. It happens about every 18 to 19 years. And then every 8 or 9 years, we have what's called our half nodal return. I'll discuss that more when we get to your nodes. But what is the point to why I'm bringing this up right now? Wherever our Scorpio energy is, this week, right now, is giving us a little peek into what's going to be rolling out over the next 2 years. This nodal, the lunar eclipse and going into the solar eclipse is beginning the energy of that nodal axis. Since you're Scorpio rising, even though it's not your nodes, wherever Scorpio is, we're going to be asked to make some changes and release. And more specifically, because Scorpio is very much about drama and anxiety, and while it's very much about passion and intimacy and wanting something so bad to be a certain way, and that energy of just passion and wanting to be in something meaningful, right? There's a lot of upheaval in the attempt to create that in one's life. That is going to need to be tempered, or things will fall away, right? And so what does that mean? Well, Sagittarius is that Scorpio is that fixed water sign. And as I mentioned in my videos last week, what do we have when we have fixed water? It's ice, right? And it's very hard to penetrate it. It's like, no, I want this. I want it this way. It's got to be this way. Well, it's sitting opposite Taurus. None of the energies work alone. The first house works with the energy of the seventh house. The second house works with the energy of the eighth house. Third house with the ninth house. Whoever's across the wheel, you guys are kind of like partners, right? Except you're opposite. Taurus is very grounded, not dramatic, ruled by Venus, which is like an element of calmness. There's an element of calmness about Taurian energy. It has to do with value system, feeling good about what you're in, feeling good about yourself. Scorpio's like, where am I in all of this? Taurus is like, I know who I am, right? And that's what we say a lot with those energies. So there's going to have to be a tempering over the next 2 years in your first house of self, as far as how you process things in your life in general, because there are certain houses that really do impact all areas of our life, all areas. And obviously the first house of self would be one. Okay. And we're going to talk about the angular houses as we go along, like the houses that really do impact everything. So just your general sort of approach to life, you're going to start to feel it now, needs to shift. What's really good is that wherever your Scorpio energy is, that does need to shift, it's going to be very supported, meaning things are going to be coming up in your life. There are no accidents in this energy, I could tell you. And this could be unbelievably positive for you. I know so many Sagittarius risings that are finishing up we're finishing up this nodal axis of Sagittarius and Gemini. Even if people don't have their personal nodes there, just wherever there's especially Sagittarius risings, they had so many challenges presented to them, but they're absolutely on the better side of things right now. So that's something that you have to look forward to. But in order to have that experience, you sort of have to truly like let go and let God kind of, if things are really not working for you and you're experiencing a lot of processing a lot of pain or processing a lot of various energies. And I'm saying that because I know what your Chiron is in. So we're going to talk about Chiron. Just stay open to whatever shows up in your life. And I feel like this will be a better experience for you. So let's go on. So you can read the rest of that on your own. The second house, let's talk about the second house. So the second house, the landlord is Taurus and it's ruled by Venus. And this has a lot to do with your self-esteem, your personal value system, the money that you make from the work that you do, your work ethic, your possessions, things of value to you, right? So we're born in the first house, and then in the second house, we're like, oh, I guess I need to like eat something. That's why the food that we eat is also second house Taurus. The food that we eat, also the way we nurture ourselves. Like in that second house, we could be like, oh, I'm cold. I need something to wear, right? You're born naked in the first house, right? And the second house, you're like, I think I need food. I think I need a roof over my head. That stuff matters. I think I need money in my life. I think I need people. I think I need whatever, right? You understand? So that's that I need kind of energy here. So that's why it's connected to personal finances, material possessions, and your concept of value. So you have Sagittarius there. So you have a sense of abundance when it comes to money matters. You may also be a spendthrift. You value your ability to see the big picture. If the second house found its cusp in the sign of Sag, which yours did, it's hard to hold on to money or stick to beaten trails to earn it, like do the same old, because Sagittarius energy is the energy of the traveler. It always has a backpack, very very interested in like foreign land, foreign travel, higher education at the same time, but just being able to like explore philosophy and higher mindedness. And that's all Sagittarius stuff. Sagittarius, that's why that energy also rules marketing and advertising and negotiating. It's these higher level considerations, right? So you have that in the second house. So planets transiting the second house reveal changes in resources or self-esteem. Okay. So you have that Sag there. So, here, you can maybe eat a little too much, spend a little too much, even earn too much, or be in any way unrealistic about your worth and your value in things. Wherever our Sagittarius energy is, we can absolutely put the cart before the horse. We can absolutely be overly optimistic about particular things and then maybe be disappointed very often on the other side of that. So that's just something that, you know, you need to just pay attention again, and you could read the rest of that on your own. Let's go into the third house is Gemini. Gemini energy is the landlord and Mercury is the ruler. So this is all kinds of communication, phone, social media, computer, speaking, singing, writing, name it, right? The written word, the way we communicate on the internet. It doesn't rule the internet, that's Uranus. It doesn't rule technology, that's Uranus, but it's the way we communicate. It's also obviously our technological devices, because it's also about short distance travel. It also rules like trains and cars and bicycles and motorcycles, like the way we would get around in a more local way. It's also our siblings. Our extended family, our coworkers, people we work with, not people who work for us or who we work for. That's more sixth house. Your classmates, all of that. So you have Capricorn in the third. You're very pragmatic. You have wisdom to know when to speak and when to hold your tongue. You may believe yourself to be a superior communicator. You could be pretty tough, pretty tough. And I feel like there's a lot of stuff going on in your chart that indicates that to me. Although Capricorn is the sign of death and rational choices, as well as practical use of all things in life, it's also a sign of karma, damaged things, mistakes, and coldness of heart. To keep your third house in Capricorn balance, you cannot detach from your emotional core. It could actually be a little easy for you to do that. So you do want to be careful of that. Even though it's low-key not, it's how you could seem anyway. So compassion followed by the rest is the key to any challenge of this house, especially in cases where sibling has constant chronic problems, no matter if they're material, physical, or any other kind. At the same time, strong boundaries and the need for rest are accented here. You can easily give in to stress and discover that as soon as you've had enough sleep, your mind clears up, the future seems much brighter, or at least acceptable, okay? Can't take life too seriously, right? That's wherever our Capricorn is, we have to think about that. Going on to the fourth house. So Cancer is the landlord of the fourth house, and it's ruled by the moon, and it has to do with our home, our physical home or metaphorical home, right? Our early childhood life, our private nurturing spaces, our ability to feel grounded and rooted. It also indicates relationship with mother, as does the moon. Also, so anything that helps you feel grounded, rooted, safe, secure, your physical home, your early experience in your first family, that kind of stuff. So you have Aquarius on the fourth. So your home life is busy and unpredictable. There may have been upheavals in your home life during your childhood. With this placement, I get that you're always in search of consistency. So there's a signal here where there was a lot of moving and changes in your life at a young age, or points out the importance of the divorced parent, went through, maybe where you had to reacclimate yourself as to feeling grounded, rooted, and safe and secure. The greatest satisfaction here is found through personal freedom, and that's not always easy to incorporate into your relationships. Dominant roles of partners, managers, superiors of any kind. Emotional independence and clarity are unimaginably important with this placement. But so you have a lot of energy that also indicates this heaviness of responsibility as well. So just keep in mind that, you're someone who needs to find something constant and satisfying in changes. So it's like riots, ego battles, your own differences, while the state of inner peace is reached through the most unusual method. So, do you, whatever. I would say that's wherever Aquarius is. It's like be you, do you, whatever works for you, wherever you need to, whatever kind of situation you need. A lot of times Aquarius energy on the fourth, I see the people move around a lot, or they live in very, I had a client who, not that long ago, which is why it's still very fresh, who lived in one of those like little mini houses. You know what I mean? So very, very cute, very funny. A lot of, I have more clients than you would imagine who are actually married, but they don't live with their partner. or they're married and they have separate bedrooms. You know what I mean? Like it's something where it's unique, it's out of the box, but it works for you, whatever it is, right? And so that's that energy of that fourth house Aquarius, but it's usually because reflective of what went on in your early environment. Moving on to the fifth house. So Leo's the landlord there, ruled by the sun, and it is the house of fun and joy and falling in love, love affairs, children, creativity. There's a lot going on here. There's drama, there's color. There, it's the most colorful space in the whole wheel. So this really does indicate a lot of when we look at the fifth house of when I, as an astrologer, look at somebody's fifth house energy, I could see what their children might be experiencing, as well as their fourth and fifth house energy will let me know how they feel about parenting and how they parent, that kind of thing. So that Aquarius on the fourth, you would be a very kind of unique, out of the box parent. That could also indicate differences in the idea of mothering. So even in the ability to maybe even become pregnant, a little different, maybe needing outside help, maybe challenges getting pregnant, or the opposite end of the spectrum. Somebody just has to look at you when you get pregnant, that kind of thing, right? But where there is this very unique kind of different thing having to do with mothering as well. So you have Pisces on the fifth. So you're very creative, very artistically talented. You enjoy music, dance, theater, any pastime which is uplifting, and it helps you escape. Pisces is very, very much about escapism, but you want to be careful. Like Pisces on the fifth can also indicate somebody who can have addictions, very strong desire for like mind altering substances, any sort of self-destructive behavior, is because that's Pisces. Because Pisces is the landlord of the 12th house, which we call the house of the hidden, but we also equally so call it the house of self-sabotage. So it's almost where like wherever our Pisces energy is, life can be too big for us in that area. We want to be of service. We want to just be in this really beautiful, dreamy space. But then as it turns out, life's not like that. So wherever that Pisces energy is, we could be very sacrificial. We could find ourselves in challenging situations. And whatever we experience that's difficult in a Pisces energy is so raw. It's so raw. And, you have your Chiron in Pisces, and we're going to talk about the house placement and all of that in a little bit, but it could be painful, and not that it's like, it's not that it's bad. Pisces energy is so giving and so loving and so of service and so sensitive and intuitive. It's where the veil is the thinnest again, and it's certainly not the most challenging placement to have it on the fifth. But it's just, again, it's something that you have to keep in mind, that there could be this energy, this desire to escape. Now, at the same time, because this fifth house energy, again, also indicates children. And so what can happen here, Pisces is ruled by Neptune, and Neptune rules dis-ease, disease, dis-ease of things that we can't see. So, that's why the 12th house has to do with like, drug addiction, or psychological issues, where we would often find like drug rehabs, or, institutions to help us with our mental faculties, anything like that, that would deal with like hidden kind of situations. That's all Pisces 12th house energy. So because you have it in the fifth, and the fifth does represent children in your life, right? You can, your children can end up having some sort of addictive situations as well, escapist tendencies. Same time, they could be very, very creative. You follow what I'm saying? So I think you understand what I mean. So it's that kind of thing. So let's go on to the sixth house, is the house. So Virgo is the landlord there, ruled by Mercury. So Mercury rules the third and the sixth. So the sixth house has to do with our health, mental, physical, and emotional. It has to do with our pets, and it has to do with our daily experience. So It rules schedules, organization, routines, fitness, diet, exercise, including odd jobs, all kinds of work. So the thing is, it's like the sixth house has to do with like, are you experiencing work-life balance? You know, you get up in the morning, you put your feet on the floor, you go brush your teeth, that kind of thing, right? Where are you going to work? Who are you working for? Who's working for you? What does it look like there, right? That kind of like daily experience kind of thing. But it's not only your work, right? A lot of times, but it is very connected to our daily work, our daily routine. So because work is part of most people's daily routines, we could say work, but not everybody works. So it's also, again, your health, your pets, and just what it is that you do on the day to day. And remember when I was mentioning about ascendant and descendant, right? How the two sides of the wheel work together. So the sixth house works with the 12th house, right? And I was just talking about that 12th house Pisces with Neptune. So that 12th house has to do with your subconscious, and the sixth house has to do with your daily experience. Sixth house is the house of problems and enemies as well, which is why we say problem solving energy is very indicated in the sixth house, because that's what we do on a day to day, right? We solve problems. That's what we do. All day, every day, we're always solving at least these little micro problems, right? Always doing that. And that's very sixth house energy. But for you, I did, and I want to just say this now sort of as like a holistic comment, because there are a lot of energies that indicate in your chart that this is the case, where it's very important for you to have a very strong mind-body connection. It could be the kind of thing where, because of certain outer planets that are placed in that sixth house, where you can literally feel sick if you don't like your job. But you know how people say, I'm sick of my job. My job is making me sick. Like, seriously, it could make you sick. No joke. That's just the way your chart is aspected, where there's got to be this constant temperature check between how you are living your daily life. And I'm going to say it as broad as that, whether it's in relationship, work, where you live, what you do, how you're thinking, and the state of your health. There is a very heavy direct energetic correlation, more so for you than maybe the next person. Okay. And you're going to see that kind of sprinkled throughout your chart. So you have Aries on the 6th. Your daily life is far from steady. You like to start your day early, free to set your own routines rather than be tied to a stable routine. Aries, again, likes to do what it wants to do when it wants to do it the way it likes to do it. It's the leadership energy. Aries on the 6th, I always feel like, oh, it's probably an entrepreneur or somebody who runs their own department or somebody who just strongly needs to do their own thing, maybe like an independent contractor kind of thing. You know what I mean? So anything like that. So this position puts an accent on you need to practice starting something new, exercising daily, really exercise, meditation, good eating, super important for you. Whatever version of that you mean, a lot of people absolutely hate meditating. And with the Aries on the 6th, it might be really hard for you to meditate. Seriously, when you have fire on your daily energy, it's very hard to disconnect. But there are so many different variations of meditation. Sometimes, even if you just sit down on a chair, you don't have to go into pose and stuff like that. But even if you just sit in a chair and put your hands on your belly for 5 minutes, 2 or 3 times throughout the day, and just breathe into your belly and not your shoulders, and just feel the inhalation and the exhalation, that will be very grounding for you. And that's something that like a fire on the 6th could end up doing quite easily. So you can read more about that. Taurus on the 7th. Okay, so the 7th house is a very important house. Because while it does have to do with marriage and serious partnerships, it's serious relationships as well. Anybody that you have a soul contract with. So that could be a family member, a friend, anyone where you have this shared, not only soul contract, but like a shared passion or something connecting you. But at the same time, it's also more than that. It's contracts, any sort of contractual agreement, literally like in business. Could also have to do with your clients if you have a business. Seventh house also rules the energy of like the second oldest child. It rules the energy of law. It's a lawsuit energy where um transiting, it's just important to understand this transiting, not so much in your natal chart, but transit. It's just important to know what's going on in your seventh house so you know what's transiting. If you're ever in the throes of a lawsuit, to see what's transiting your seventh house to give you some information on an energy that you may be in a lawsuit with, right? So it's other. And this works opposite your ascendant sign, right? So this is a very important energy to understand. Now, going into this next 2 years, as I was talking about the nodal axis, Taurus is going to be the north node. Taurus is going to be like right now, Gemini, which is all about communicating, learning new things. Haven't we been learning new things, right? Because of COVID, we've been having to learn to adapt to things in a new way. That's total Gemini, right? So for the next 2 years, it's going to be Taurus. Taurus is all about, all right, how are we all feeling about ourselves? Are we feeling valued in our life? Are we having our emotional needs met? Are we being productive? Are we nurturing ourselves in the right way? That's Taurus. And so Taurus is that north node, and it's very balanced. It's like come down to earth and appreciate the five senses. Taurian energy is very much about the five senses, about Venus, about being grounded, the earth, the body. Taurus rules the body, right? It's all about that earth energy, body energy, senses, taste, smell, sight, practical, grounded. And we're all going to be asked to do that. Pull it down to earth, come down to earth. And also, we're all going to be looking at not only how we nurture ourselves, but how we make money and how we take care of ourselves. And we all are being called to do that, over these next 2 years. Now, having Taurus on the seventh, because the seventh house is the house of mirroring, in relationship, in your interpersonal relationships, even though you're Scorpio rising and even though you're Capricorn moon, in relationships, you're a Taurus and you gravitate towards Taurian energy, that element of groundedness, even though it's opposite your rising sign. That's really energetically what your soul craves. And it's what it is that you want, that groundedness, that stick-to-itness, right? Stability, practicality, all of that stuff. And you want that in relationships, but it can be very interesting here because there could be, there's always this challenge of two sides of Venus in the fields of relationship, right? So Taurus is the sign of the practical values and being grounded, earthy beauty, all of that stuff. But it also at the same time, it corresponds to Libra because Libra is the landlord there. And as such, that speaks to outer beauty, makeup, pose, and vanity and its challenges. So when these two coincide, envy can easily come to the surface of matters, being vain, judgmental, an issue if you weren't told often enough how pretty you are. These all of those vulnerabilities and insecurities can end up rising to the surface at the same time when you're in relationship. So then moving on to the eighth house. So eighth house is where Scorpio lives with Pluto, right? And you have Gemini on the eighth. So this tells me, again, it's all that scorpionic stuff that we've already talked about. It has to do with birth, death, sex, transformation, mysteries, merging though. It's a house of merging. So it's where you show up as a we in relationships, blending money, blending intimacy, blending values, blending, merging, right? But also it's a money house because it has to do with money that comes to you through either a partner, an investment, an insurance payout, an inheritance, anything like that, right? And anything that's cyclical. So it's kind of a big house. It also indicates like the financial compensation from a lawsuit. That's eighth house stuff, right? And that would be more relevant to like a transiting energy. So with Gemini there, you're sexually curious. You may be difficult to pin down when involved in joint enterprises. With the eighth in Gemini, change is always move through one's mental plane, and superficial approach is almost impossible to accept. So this is a typical position for those born with the, obviously with your ascendant in Scorpio, you're going to see that you have real trouble accepting anything carefree that lacks depth and deep instinct in its core. Like superficial stuff just doesn't really fly with you. You're not interested in small talk, but communication is super important because Gemini does rule communication as well. Changes in life will be strangely casual when they are big and usually approached with ease and vigor. So it's like, because there's always, the eighth house can indicate areas in our life that have a lot of upheaval and a lot of change. But with Gemini, Gemini is just like, all right. Gemini's really very easygoing, right? It really is very easygoing because it's air and it's mutable and it's just like, all right, very communicative, doesn't want to stay in one spot for too long, very forgiving, Geminian energy is very forgiving. So you could be very ultimately forgiving when it comes to anything of a cyclical nature having to do with relationships or even with other people. Because it's almost the Gemini energy is just like, all right, I could see several reasons why this has gone on, and you're only human, do you, let's just get you move on, right? It's very air, right? But it's the baby air energy because it's the third house. So it's the baby of the air signs, right? Libra is the second, and then Aquarius is like the oldest of the air. Gemini is the baby of the air. So it's like, whatever, do you be you, that kind of thing. So even when you have these big changes, where somebody else might be like, oh my goodness, that's horrible. You're like, it's just what it is, man, which is kind of nice. I actually really like that energy on the eighth house. To me, it just sort of adds a lighter element to a heavy energy. Ninth house. So ninth house, Sagittarius is the landlord there, ruled by Jupiter. It is the house of truth, of expansion, right? Because Jupiter is all about expanding. It's foreign land, foreign travel, importing, exporting, living in a foreign country, traveling to a foreign country, advertising, marketing, publishing, higher education, religion, belief system, in-laws. You see, some of the houses are very big. So gambling, adventure, risk, all that stuff. So it's all an energy of wanderlust as well, So you have Cancer on the ninth house, which is interesting because that's like a very sort of like the opposite, right? Like very sentimental, right? When you travel, you could be very sentimental about leaving home. You might even want to bring something from home to be very nurturing for you while you're traveling. You might travel because you want to, not because you really, really want, because you have to, not maybe because you really, really want to, even though you have a very strong attraction towards it. It's not that, but there is this element when you do travel of this sort of like almost like a nostalgia energy, or you could even find things that are very nostalgic and wherever it is that you visit, almost like an energy of familiarity, right? In foreign places where you almost feel like you've been there before, right? Very interesting there. Very often this position will point to the possibility of life abroad, as is in the case confirmed with at least two or more significations in your chart. Your greatest teachers are found in your own heart, and you're going to come to see that only people that you love can actually teach you anything at all. So because it's, again, that ninth house, because it's about higher education, and it's about learning the higher, the most important things in life, not the silly little mundane things, right? If you think about it like this, Gemini third house works with that ninth house energy, Sagittarius. So in that Gemini third house energy, it's like we learn how to tie our shoe and ride our bike. Whereas in that ninth house energy, Sagittarius energy, we're learning about religion and faith and the larger, more important lessons in life, right? And so with Cancer there, though, because Cancer energy, wherever it is very important for us to feel nurtured and cultivated in that energy. You will only really learn from people who make you feel comfortable and in situations that make you feel very comfortable. So you can read more about that. 10th house energy. So you have Leo on the 10th. So your identity is very strong links with your public status, because 10th house is career, public reputation, standing in the world. It has to do with father we look at a lot because the fourth house would be mother, 10th house would be father. So what goes on in our 10th house would indicate a lot. And that Leo energy rules children. So to have that Leo energy there, you often have a lot of support by parents, is what I wanted to say, which wasn't coming out. Leo energy is really, I mean, wherever it is, it's great to have it on the 10th house. I mean, a lot of entertainers have Leo on the 10th, a lot of public speakers, people who are out there among the people, who are running think tanks, who give speeches, who run things. It's like a very sort of in the spotlight kind of energy. There are many ways that could manifest, obviously, right? And then going on to the 11th house, Aquarius is the landlord there, ruled by Uranus. And this is all about friends, your salary, goals and gains, your future. It's also the energy of technology, video and electronic media, like the techie part, networking, social justice, humanitarian causes, personal networking, sudden events, right? This short-term goals, like I mentioned before, where we are most eccentric, sudden events, surprises, invention, astronomy, science fiction, all things future. It's all about the future there. So you have Virgo there. So we're talking about everything I just said, friends, the groups that you decide to associate with. You're very fussy. You're very fussy about the company that you keep. You're a very practical and caring friend. You look out for your friends. You might be critical of your friends who fail to live up to your expectations. There's often something wrong with friends that you find, and a lot of times you have good reason to feel like that, right? I mean, because you can experience a lot of betrayal and a lack of trust in people in that 11th house as well. Because the thing is, the Virgo energy is to be of service, right? There's a purity about the Virgo energy. And so it's not that you're critical to be critical, it's you're critical because you're looking out for somebody, but somebody can easily take advantage of that energy as well. So just something, so you read more about that. And then let's see, finally, the 12th house. So 12th house rules endings. Okay, tying up loose ends, completions, the afterlife, old age, surrender, secret enemies, hospitals, jails, institutions. A very creative house, though. It rules the imagination, art, film, dance, poetry, subconscious mind. Again, it's like the darkness before dawn, as I mentioned before. It can be the house of self-sabotage and behaviors and sacrifice, because it's ruled by Neptune. Neptune's very sacrificial energy. So you have Libra here. So you can be very overly sensitive to the needs of others, leading to a fear of conflict. What's very interesting about here is there's this mystery here having to do with the Libra energy. So here, as I indicate here, if we put with the 12th in Libra, it seems inevitable to lie or to be lied to, because Libra rules is the scales. The glyph is the scales. It's a lot about the truth coming out, speaking the truth. Now, Sagittarius is about higher minded kind of truth. Libra is more like on a daily, somebody lying to us or you lying to somebody else. But because it's in the house of the hidden, it's like the truth being hidden. So it's, there's this inevitability, again, to either lie or be lied to, or usually both. But if we put that aside, we could see the magical story of Libra in this mysterious house and realize that someone we once left behind is there for us to find them again in this life, where you feel like almost at a certain point in your life, you're going to come home to yourself, which is very, very interesting, quite beautiful. I really like that. And you could read more about that on your own. So you're going to read about, your moon energies and all of that, on your own. I'm sorry. Let me just look down and make sure. You read all about that. So I'm just going to go down. You're going to read about your Venus and all of that. But I do want to bring your attention to your nodes. So just like with anything else, you can't just know the sign. You have to know the house. So important, especially when you're going to be looking at like your Saturn, your Uranus, your Neptune, your Pluto. Really take care in looking at those outer planets, right? Take your time reading it, right? But when we're talking about the nodes, it's the same exact thing, as well as Chiron. So why don't we talk about Chiron first? Let's mention Chiron. So you have Chiron in Pisces, and which is the wound of betrayal and faith. So your Chiron sign in astrology shows where you sustained your deepest wounds in life, and chironic wounds can never be completely healed, but they can be worked and transmuted for good. Usually wherever we learn this lesson, it's still there, but we can actually be so wise and help other people out in that area, which is really nice. And Chiron in Pisces is very interesting because Chiron and the sign of Pisces represent duality. So there's this push and pull with this energy. You want to be at one with the universe, but also feel that you can't because of your human nature. So there's all about like a loss of trust in the universe. With Chiron and Pisces, you don't completely believe in the oneness of all that is. So, but there are different ways that this can manifest, and you can actually experience both versions throughout your life. And you may have already experienced a lot of growth in this area where you're like, oh my gosh, that was my issue for years, or I struggled with that for a long time, but I've gone through that, you know, because we go through our Chiron wounds like in this lifetime. So you could have a very deep fear of being hurt by the universe or forces at play, where you feel almost like you've been left out to dry. And Chiron in Pisces often indicates this almost, you can't touch it, but you feel it, this sense of betrayal, almost like the universe was not there for you when you needed it to be. And there's this element of victimization. And it could be very, very subconscious, you know, where you just feel like you were dealt an unfair hand in life is really, really common here. Now, alternatively, you could feel like you're not deserving of the energy of the universe, where you could feel like very less than, very victimized, but very sort of small in all of it. So read more on this slowly when you can, but you have this energy in your fifth house. Now, what is the fifth house? Fifth house has to do with children. Fifth house has to do with falling in love affairs, right? So if you feel like you haven't been able to have children, or you feel like you've had a lot of issues with children, or you've had a lot of issues with your creativity, or if you've often tried to start your own business or anything like that, right? There could be a lot of pain experience there. In this fifth house energy. So this can manifest in a couple of ways, where you're trying really hard to be recognized, respected, or loved, to get that appreciation. You could also feel so unworthy of being the center of attention that you avoid the spotlight by any means possible. So you'll support others, often children, by trying to help others gain notoriety and do for others, because it's almost like this sense, this lack of self-worth, which can be really difficult. The thing is with Chiron, it always comes from childhood stuff. So, you know, you'll be able to see that, how that ends up rolling out for you. Let me see, what else did I want to say? Okay. Yeah, I mean, there's just the fear of joining without talent or reason, you know, just feeling less than. Okay. Now let's go to your nodes. So something worth understanding with the nodes is that no matter how hard you try to avoid thinking about issues they bring up, it's those very issues that are going to end up haunting you until you engage with them. So you have your North Node in Cancer and your South Node in Capricorn. So I give you a lot of information here for you to read through, but let's just go to some bullet points that I'm addressing here. Some attributes to develop. First of all, let's talk about your Achilles heel, because the Achilles heel with this energy could certainly be to be aware of your need for control, right? If only I could make them get their lives together, then I can relax and be vulnerable, right? But the truth is that you can never control situations or other people enough to feel that it's safe to be yourself. When you try to take charge of situations in other people's lives without being invited, you can inappropriately usurp others' responsibilities, right? So it's this idea of attributes to develop. You need to develop noticing and validating feelings, empathy, nurturing and supporting others, building your own foundation and security, honest disclosure of feelings and insecurities, humility, accepting others' flaws and fluctuating moods without judgment, staying centered in your own feelings. That is what you need to work on, right? Tendencies to leave behind, controlling everything, compulsion to take charge, ignoring that there's a process in everything, hiding feelings and fears in intimate relationship, doing things to gain respect or admiration from others, and so on. So make sure you read that bullet list and the copy that I put in there. Now, it's not enough to know that though, right? Those are the signs that you have it in. But we also have to understand your north node is in the 9th house and your south node is in the 3rd house. So this is almost like having the north node in Sagittarius and the south node in Gemini. So the fact that those are the houses that you have your energies in, and because that is the axis of the nodes right now, you are feeling this current nodal axis quite strongly, but almost in a reverse kind of way. So it feeling lately almost like the past has met the present sort of thing. So things you need to leave behind with this nodal axis is second guessing what others are thinking, indecisiveness, perpetually seeking more information, saying what others want to hear, invalidating intuitive knowing with logic, gossiping, impatience, waiting for immediate answer, wanting immediate answers, and trusting others' perceptions instead of your own. So you have to develop speaking from a higher place, direct communication free from censorship, reliance on your intuition, trusting yourself more. Okay, definitely trusting yourself more. So go through both of those placements, and then you sit back and just from a holistic point, you're going to identify like what you need to work on there. So I have information here, obviously, about what it means to be a Scorpio ascendant. And then finally, the last thing I want to bring to your attention is your Black Moon Lilith. Black Moon Lilith, just so you know, the nodes of the moon are the nodes of the moon. They're literally these nodes on the moon that shift when it comes to, and they're very like, it's very connected to math. Chiron is an asteroid-like body. Black Moon Lilith is a mathematical location that astronomers even acknowledge. This is like very real. It's a pocket of energy that when we're born, we take it into our energy with us. And it's like, it indicates the dark side of our nature, like the thing that we do in the day-to-day that kind of gets in the way, but we don't see it. It's very hard for us to see it. And even if we see it, we don't want to see it because it's uncomfortable. So we all have that. So you have your Black Moon in Sagittarius in your 2nd house of the money that you make from the work that you do, your sense of self-value and all of that. So this could be very directed to money. So you could have a tendency to throw yourself into new ventures, determined to be exhilarated physically, emotionally, mentally. This could be a positive trait if you show some restraint and consider those around you. But the Black Moon in Sag here indicates that you're somewhat reckless in your pursuit of your goals. Imagine a team of horses galloping out of control, right, across like the countryside. Ask some people close to you if they could perhaps identify with this energy, with this imagery of you. Do they feel as if you are a team of horses and they are riding in and out of control of the control carriage? You might be surprised by their answers. You don't fully realize how the exuberant side of your nature takes over you. It's hard for us to see these things in ourselves. You don't mean to bully your loved ones and colleagues, but this can be the effect if you're not careful. This sensitive point represents the darker side of your nature, characteristics you know exist and you need to address, but prefer not to acknowledge. So by just shining some light on this, it could be very, very helpful to you. Now, having this in the sixth house can indicate problems coming up when it comes to money, where you're likely to blame others for your money problems, but actually it's unlikely to be their fault. Your own self-defeating behavior is in some way contributing to any shortfall in your income. The good news is that you can break the cycle once you acknowledge and discover the ways in which you are sabotaging your financial success. It is possible that your self-esteem is somehow linked to your monetary challenges. Perhaps you need to value your skills more and change jobs. Maybe you're procrastinating on a business deal, or you're afraid of taking that financial risk. Maybe you're acting too rashly, or are you overspending, compensating for a lack of self-esteem and happiness? That can come up there a lot, particularly because the second house, this is squaring your Chiron energy. So if you're really not feeling very good about yourself, like retail therapy could help for sure, or like, trying to fill that hole, right, by other means. But whatever the scenario is, you're able to face the truths and create more financial freedom for yourself and your loved ones, getting to the core of like what the issue might be there. So that is everything that I really wanted to talk to you about your chart and about your report. Everything else you're going to read through on your own. Let me know if you have any questions. I only ask that you give me a couple days to get back to you when you shoot me some questions, if you have any. And that's it. I want to thank you so very much for trusting me with your energy. And I'm going to render this and send it over to you. All right. Bye-bye.